So today we're going to talk about sharing from an overflowing cup. So first of all, I'm sharing from Poems Porn on Instagram. It's good vibes with emotion. Life's too short to be with someone not crazy about you, and being someone with emotional, like we call it EQ, emotional intelligence, like an IQ, but EQ means not fully hating anyone because you understand there's a reason why they are the way that they are. The reason, basically, you're able to relate to others. So you fill up your cup and you could find them in your cup. You don't need to be like, oh, you're on the outside are different than me on the inside, right? The reason some people are so kind is because the world was unkind to them and they didn't want other people to feel the way that they did. Also, it's important to remember sometimes we like taking care of people because it heals the part of us. It heals the part of us that needed someone to take care of us. We should never regret the love we give. It returns to us in another time, in another person, in another circumstance, but it always comes back to you. Realizing that falling in love, with people who needed, that I may have been falling in love with people who needed to be loved, not people who could love me back, can make the hurt stop. They needed love. They weren't able to love me back. The Zen State of Mind writer on Instagram talks about how you were not built for being desired in secret. You were made to be claimed in front of the world. You were not for indecision. You were for devotion that doesn't flinch for his convenience. You were not built for built for his convenience, but you were made to be his center. You were not built for the love you have to fight for or for decoding mixed signals or shallow sex. You were made for the one who fights for you, for a love that leaves no room for doubt, and to be undone and adored in the same breath. You weren't built for maybe, but you've been built for I've never been more sure. You weren't built for the man who makes you anxious, but for the one who makes you exhale. You weren't built for the lukewarm, but for a man who knows exactly what to do with you. You weren't built for loud love with no depth or quiet love, but you were made for quiet love with endless roots. You were not built for survival mode. You were built for soft mornings and steady hands. You were not built for splitting yourself. You were built to be fulfillment, to be fully met. You weren't built to explain your worth. You were built for someone who just knows. I want to share some recovery literature from Codependency Anonymous, 12-step recovery program. So in codependency, good feelings stem from you liking me. In recovery, they stem from me liking me. In codependency, good feelings stem from your approval. In recovery, they're determined by self-approval. In codependency, your struggle affects my serenity. In recovery, your struggle matters because I don't care about you, but it doesn't control how I feel about myself. In codependency, my self-esteem is bolstered by solving your problems and relieving your pain. In recovery, my self-esteem comes from solving my problems and sometimes experiencing my pain. In codependency, my mental attention is focused on pleasing you. In recovery, I'm free to please me even when it may not please you. In codependency, my mental attention is focused on protecting you. In recovery, I protect me even if sometimes you must protect yourself without my help. In codependency, I may disguise my feelings, manipulating you to do it my way. In recovery, I tell the truth about my feelings regardless. In codependency, I'm not aware of what I want. In recovery, and I ask and I'm aware of what you want. Like I ask what you want, I'm aware of what you want. But in recovery, I'm not only conscious of my wants, I verbalize and take action to achieve them. In codependency, my hobbies and interests are put aside, and your hobbies and interests dominate. In recovery, I pursue hobbies and interests, even if that means spending time away from you. In codependency, your clothing, behavior, appearance are dictated by me as you're a reflection of me. In recovery, you dress, behave, and appear as you wish, regardless of how it makes me feel. And then in a codependency meeting, I was learning about the shame that I had about being a night owl. It's a phase. It's not something I always was. That I'm passionate, that I'm an activist, the shame that I have a home in a basement. Also learning how I'm not just here for someone else's pleasure and entertainment and motivation and convenience. It's so hard to admit that I was willing to do that to myself so many times. It was so hard to admit. I'm also taking responsibility for my own purpose, direction in life, socialization, hobbies, food for thought, clean home, giving myself nature, space, and time, pleasure and joy, values and friendships, feelings and beliefs. I'm learning about being honest, sincere, genuine, and real with myself first, letting myself be average versus the best or the worst, and still lovable, and room for growth, that I've integrated my higher power into myself enough today to not need to victimize and violate what's free, because it can always be used against me and cause me to be destructive or avoidant. Creativity, health, meditation, walking, prayer, taking care of myself, taking care of my soul, not needing external observation, appearance-based validation, and it's all internally fulfilling. Then my self-security, my self-assuredness, my self-care, self-permission, self-acceptance, is all contagious, not just unhealthy shame poisonously transferred. As I say, these shames can be contagious, God forbid. And I also went to an SLAA meeting because it's on a similar topic for sex and love addicts or avoidance. So I recognize getting together for art and creativity, gratitude brings me to service, and that I can't change anyone is what brings me to acceptance. Now that I cut Aaron off for being emotionally abusive, and I'm not saying now, I'm saying I wrote this months ago, and it's not even clear whether he was emotionally abusive or I was out of boundaries and interacting in an unhealthy way, and he was trying to, enforce his boundaries. So saying that nothing he says was trustworthy. And this is when he was triggered and he may have been abusive. And I saw his wounded inner child, defensive, egotistical, the false self, and taking my own energy back into circuitry. Instead of begging someone to take care of me or care for me, and how he has no power in order, where I might, considering my history where I didn't walk away at abuse. So this was important for me to go through this, whether or not it's about him. Also, that if I stayed in an abusive relationship, it makes me hateful, cruel, like the abuser. This is what had happened to me in the past. And I'd end up hating, raging against masculinity, fantasizing, anxiety, sex instead of love, and losing my sense of self. But I want to grow and recover and heal and tell the truth. So if I was predisposed because of religious trauma, over busyness, dissociating, overly involved in the world, over responsibility, isolating, feeling empty, lonely, too alone, and patterns of emotional unavailability, wanting to be saved and to save. So I went into therapy and I said, self-permission. I have to be able to change my mind, when it's not working for me. So for example, is he abusing me or not? Rather, what do I think about this? And what do I want to think? And it affects my weight, the fluctuations, the cycles. It affects the pain in my right hip and my neck and my left knee and low back. It affects feeling like there's a man who wouldn't work for me. Because that's maybe what I inherited from my grandmother and my mother, where I didn't feel trustworthy to have money. Like maybe it's about dopamine and how relating to the parents who I feel had anhedonia, which is like low dopamine, lack of pleasure. I think of my father and me and my sister Hannah, the appetite, the night owl, the self-destructive, and just like the way that my father and in the behaviors that I had transferred, like there was this man, Aaron, and then Michael I mentioned. So it's like, avoidant, narcissism, dismissive. Really, it was like not meeting my need. And then in being connection, needs were being created. So, the insufficient logical prowess, the fallacies, the dismiss, the deflect, the technicalities, the irrelevance, the twisted, overgeneralizing, straw man argument, the out of context doubts and invalidation, like that I felt that Aaron was trying to make me emotional because of, is probably like what I was acting out from the behaviors that didn't work for my parents in terms of feeling like, self-acceptance. And then like even thinking of like the physical, like this affects the self-acceptance, self-permission, also affects like I felt like when I was younger, the being a woman, like having my inner thighs, the way that the body of my feminine body is set up, it's like my inner thighs would rub, especially if I gained weight, and it made it like darker, and I felt like that's not how other women have it. And also the idea that like my mother, grandmother, I didn't witness people with a strong pelvic floor, like there was accidents happening. I know this may sound like too much, but I've heard it from a lot of different people. And I even had some issues with that if I didn't strengthen my pelvic floor. So I just kind of wanted to go there. And then Rabbi Saul Haimoff talks about mental health for educators on this program called Drop of Light, and an organization that did like educational videos, and it was all about coping skills. And sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. So physical things that could help is physical activity, mindfulness, go for a walk, listen to music, take a hot bath or shower. Mental is lean in, sit with it, let it pass. And obviously self-talk, which is where we use evidence and rational thinking. We fight the worry bully and accept anxiety and recognize it's just a thought. And even faith as a coping mechanism for anxiety, because of trust in God, we start to be able to handle unknown future, ambiguous situations, and we end up having a greater tolerance of uncertainty, a lack of power, where we have no control. These situations, what's meant to be will be. We start to have decreased worry. It's not random. And there was a sample of 332 religious Christians and Jews, and their greater trust in God actually predicted a better ability to tolerate uncertainty and lower levels of worry. And there's this character in the Torah who my father used to always compare me to, and this rabbi actually talked about him. I think he's also a doctor. So Rabbi Dr. Saul Haimoff, he says maybe this Esav, there's 3 forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but Yaakov had a twin brother, Esav. And the story was that he was not the one that was calm and sitting and learning Torah in the tent, and he was a little more active. And this rabbi wants to prove that he might have had what we call ADHD. So he had ants in his pants, and his proof is that it talks about how he was an outdoors man, a skillful hunter. And then the hyperactivity in utero, children struggling in the womb, it was mentioned in the Torah. And then impulsivity, which is, give me the food to gulp, I'm famished. And another proof was that he said, I'm at the point of death, so what's the use of the birthright? He had difficulty assessing the long-term circumstances. Additionally, he was very active, action-focused. It says he ate, he drank, he rose, he went. Actions. And then emotional dysregulation, he wept loudly. He wanted to kill Yaakov when he found out that the blessings were taken. So we learned from his father, Isaac, the second forefather, loving the ADHD child is by giving them a chance for them to channel that potential and the good and use their gifts for good deeds and mitzvos, and to give them the opportunity to succeed. And then I want to share a few posts I saw online. So about cravings, that meat, hard, crunchy foods is anger. Sugar could be depressed. Soft, sweet foods like ice cream could be anxious. Salty foods could be stress. Bulky, filling foods like crackers and pasta could be lonely, sexual frustration. And anything and everything could be jealous. I saw another post on Instagram. My boyfriend is mad at me because I went through his phone while he slept, and I didn't find anything. And instead of arguing, he brought me food and snacks and a card that said, sorry for not making you feel safe and secure, but there's no one else but you. And that really touched me. It was learning how to show up in relationship. Not perfect. And then I saw another post that said, I'm so sorry if someone made you think that it's hard to love you. And, somebody tells to someone else, I told my therapist that I feel too difficult to love, and I expect her to argue, but instead she said, be difficult for abusers to love. So we could even see why sometimes maybe where we do cause problems is actually a learned response to keep us safe. And finally, Marie Louise van Franz, a Jungian psychologist, says people who have a creative side and don't live it out are the most disagreeable clients. They make a mountain out of a molehill for fuss about unnecessary things and are just too passionately in love with someone who's not worth so much attention, and so on. There's a kind of floating charge of energy in them which is not attached to its right object. It's not attached to its right object, and therefore tends to apply exaggerated dynamism to the wrong situation. And that's the reality of wasted potential. And we'll stop here, and I wish everybody to be fruitful and to have good friendships and to release all jealousy and to find that mental clarity, to feel comfortable with uncertainty in the extent of flowing through life, and that inner circuitry, and not begging anyone to take care of us, instead just taking care of ourselves, not putting anyone else before us, and rather sharing from a overflowing cup, and feeling beloved, recognizing that we do deserve the best in life. Amen. Bye-bye.